NHS retired and grandmother Phyllis Grant was brutally murdered in her one-bedroom flat in Plaistow, East London, on the night of the 25th of March 2021. 31-year-old Donovan Miller called the police the following day
911, what's your emergency?
and confessed to the murder. Donovan was Phyllis' carer and grandson. What caused this man, without prior conviction, to betray and end the life of his grandmother? We will find out in this video. Phyllis Grant was a 76-year-old beloved mother of 5 and grandmother who had left her native country of Jamaica decades ago to come and work in England. She had found employment in the NHS and had worked most of her life in London Hospital. She settled in a one-bedroom flat on Kent Street, Plaistow, East London, and had lived there for such a long time that she was described by her neighbors as the matriarch of the community. Her neighbor Emma remembered Phyllis as a caring woman who used to check on her when she fell ill. Phyllis was also described as a strong-willed, independent and fearless woman who wouldn't hesitate to tell her neighbors off if they didn't look after the gardens. She enjoyed cooking Jamaican spicy chicken and sewing. She loved taking care of her community as well as her roses and holly bushes. Above all, she loved God. Every Sunday, she would attend her local church where she was a renowned singer. Her smile and bubbly personality were contagious. Everybody loved Phyllis Grant. Unfortunately, her kindness and caring nature would be betrayed in the most gruesome way by the person she trusted the most. On the night of the 24th of March 2021, Phyllis was peacefully sleeping in her bed when a man approached her and proceeded to strangle her. What would ensue were long minutes of intense terror. The man who was choking Phyllis Grant was none other than Donovan Miller, the grandson and carer with whom she was sharing the one-bedroom flat. Despite the fact that she was attacked at her most vulnerable state, in her sleep, despite the fact that she was an old-age pensioner, despite the fact that her adversary was more than half her age and was described by his sister as fit and healthy, Phyllis fought for her life like no other. She was so strong that her grandson had to use a vase to finish her off. He beat her over the head with the vase multiple times until her body surrendered. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the end of her ordeal. Donovan did the unthinkable to his grandma. After slaughtering the 76-year-old pensioner, Donovan put his pants down, leaned over his grandma, and anally penetrated her lifeless body. Donovan defied Phyllis one more time before making the 999 phone call to report her murder. 24 hours after the crime, Donovan confessed to killing his nan to the police. The police and forensic rushed to the scene. Donovan opened the door and came out with his hands up. What the police was about to enter was the house of horror. They found Phyllis Grant in an unlit living room under a blanket, kneeling against the side of the bed, face down, with her chin resting on the side of the bed and her arms outstretched. There was a large amount of blood around her head, on the bed, and on the floor. The police were left horrified when, in a nonchalant manner, Miller also confessed, and I quote, "I don't know if this is worth anything. I raped her as well, for what it's worth, yesterday and today." Miller was arrested at the scene and charged with Phyllis Grant murder. An anal swab of the deceased would reveal semen with a complete DNA profile matching her grandson. The murder of Phyllis Grant was described by the forensics as having involved extreme violence. Donovan Miller caused significant physical pain to his grandma. A post-mortem examination found an extensive catalogue of injuries. Phyllis suffered bruising on her scalp, neck, and tongue. A gaping laceration was found on her left scalp, which was over half a centimeter deep, and she suffered cuts, bruises, and rib fractures, and numerous abrasions to the face, and numerous wounds to the face and head, which were consistent with being caused by a broken piece of ceramic. A dissection of the scalp also revealed 3 large sites of bruising, and there was bruising to her left breast, shoulder, right buttock, left tricep, and right hamstring. She had sustained 2 injuries to her hands, which were consistent with defensive wounds. The official cause of death was compression of the neck and blunt force wounds. What makes this story even sadder is the fact that Phyllis was recovering from COVID at the time of her murder. She caught the virus in January 2021 and spent 2 weeks in hospital due to complication. When she was released, Phyllis was a frail woman who struggled with her mobility and used a walking stick. The matriarch survived the virus, but wasn't physically and emotionally prepared to fight the deadly virus living inside her home. Her grandson, Donovan. As shocking as it might sound, Donovan Miller was appointed the main carer to Phyllis Grant by his family. When she was admitted to hospital with COVID, Donovan was the intermediary between healthcare professionals and Phyllis' relatives. And according to Donovan's sister Patrice Miller, he always made sure the grandmother ate healthy meals. Donovan Miller, also known as Junior, was born in Jamaica. In 2002, at age 11, he left the Caribbean alongside his mother Paulette Jean Morgan, Phyllis' daughter, and his sister Patrice to reunite with the matriarch Phyllis in England. Years went by. Paulette and her daughter left the maternal nest to settle elsewhere. Donovan stayed behind. He had always worked since leaving school and even set up his own construction company in January 2020 prior to COVID. He had no previous conviction and mostly kept to himself. This was the public persona, the polished facade Donovan presented to his family and friends. The truth is, Donovan had a dark and evil side that the police would soon uncover. When Miller made the 999 phone call, he confessed the crime and gave a plethora of details. And when the operator asked him why he killed Phyllis, Donovan replied, and I quote, "I'm just going to say the truth. I've come a long way on my journey and enough is enough." When the police arrived to the 1-bedroom flat, the scene had been cleaned. Donovan would later describe their home as messy. The police uncovered a couple of items which include a blood-stained t-shirt, a bucket with mop covered in blood, a half-empty bottle of rum on the kitchen table, and a vase in the bin at the front of the house. But it is in Donovan's bedroom that the police would find the most disturbing piece of evidence. A notepad that read, "It's time to go," on the front cover. The content of the notepad was confusing and alarming. It contains reference to Jesus, a cult, a child sex ring, ambush, and kidnapping children. In those disturbing writings, Donovan refers to himself as an alien and says that he will leave this life to go back home soon. On one page, he had written an action plan that read, "Action is process, clear out, wrap body, deep clean, focus on how to move forward, integrity." In custody, Donovan told the police that he has been high on cocaine before the violent murder and the day after. He also claimed he didn't have mental health issues but had thoughts of self-harm. Miller sniggered when the police asked questions about the killing of his grandma. Soon, his behavior became increasingly unusual as he asked the police for drugs. Blood tests showed that Donovan had taken a recreational amount of cocaine in the 24 hours before the murder. During the interview, the police found out that Miller went to see his sister Patrice the day after the murder, in his own words, to cool off. According to Patrice, there was nothing different in his behavior, apart from the fact that he complained about her grandma being a hoarder and delaying her COVID vaccine. She also noticed a fresh cut on his finger and put plaster on it. Donovan helped her with the delivery of a new bed and had lunch with her and her flatmate. He went back home. That night, he texted Patrice to say that he loved her, and later confessed to the crime to the police. According to forensic psychiatrists, Donovan was psychotic at the time of the murder. They told the court hearing that he was suffering from a serious psychiatric illness or abnormality of mind, which reduced his ability to form reasonable judgment and exercise self-control. But they also determined that his state of psychosis was not triggered by the consumption of drugs. Miller pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He also pleaded guilty to the act of sexually penetrating a corpse through the back. The judge said, despite Miller's diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, he had some responsibility. Donovan Miller was sentenced to a hospital order with restrictions, meaning he cannot be released from a secure treatment facility without the permission of the Minister for Justice, under Sections 37 and 41 of the Mental Health Act. He was also placed on the sex offenders register for an indefinite period and was handed a sexual harm prevention order. Since he relocated to the UK at age 11, Donovan had always lived surrounded by women. His mother, his sister, and Phyllis, his grandma. He didn't grow up with a role model in the house. The person in charge was Phyllis, the matriarch. And when his mother and sister left the nest to live on their own term, he probably felt a sense of inadequacy. A title of Grandma Carer was created for him to justify his presence in the house. It's a bit like husbands or boyfriends of celebrities who get the title of managers when in reality they are glorified stay-at-home dudes. Phyllis and her grandson were sharing the one-bedroom flat. The carer was sleeping in the bedroom while the person he was supposed to care for was sleeping in the living room. Who is caring for who here? He also complained to the police and to his sister that the house was messy and that Phyllis was a hoarder. But as a carer, your job is to tidy the place, to clean after the quote-unquote client. Donovan was not a carer. Phyllis could care for herself. She made her own decision to delay the vaccine and she beat COVID. She would check on her neighbors when they fell ill. She would look after her plants. In reality, Phyllis was Donovan's carer, because if it wasn't for her, he would have been homeless. Donovan resented her for that. He felt emasculated by the strong matriarch and he had enough. So he decided to start a business, a building company, to feel accomplished, to have his own identity and exist on his own term. But unfortunately, COVID showed up at the same time, and his hope of success vanished. The government-imposed isolation didn't help his mental health. It is probably at this period that he started to heavily self-medicate with cocaine to numb the pain of feeling like a failure in his personal and professional life. I think the attack was premeditated. The realization that he wanted out of that life happened when Phyllis was admitted for 2 weeks at the hospital. Donovan had the house for himself during that time. He probably enjoyed the fact that he didn't have to look after his grandma, and wanted it to stay that way. He also waited for his victim to be at her most vulnerable before perpetrating the attack, as if he wasn't sure of his own strength. Phyllis was asleep, feeble due to her age and COVID. The notepad was his manifesto. Action is process, clear out, wrap body, deep clean, focus on how to move forward, integrity. And that's why I believe that Donovan is smart and played the psychiatrist, the police, and his family like a fiddle. He was able to commit the most heinous crime and escape a jail cell where someone would have reenacted the sexual assault of Phyllis on him, not twice, but all day, every day.
Soap drop, nigga. Oh, you think you just gonna leave it down there? No. Huh? We don't waste no motherfucking soap in here.
I'm finished.
No, nigga. You ain't finished. I've been watching you.
You have?
You ain't washed behind your ears or nothing.
But I did.
Look at me. See how I'm all clean and glistening and shit. That's hygiene, nigga. You can call me the health inspector. Now pick up the soap.
Pray, baby, pray.
Donovan was a sexually deprived individual. The only women in his life were his grandma, his sister, and his mother. He was also sexually depraved, as can testify the content of his manifesto with words like child sex ring, ambush, and kidnapping children. Donovan disrespected, dehumanized, and profiled his grandmother and profaned the temple of God because she was a deeply religious person. This is a man who suffered from very low self-esteem and inferiority complex and could only assert his dominance over Phyllis post-mortem by defiling her lifeless body. And he shows the power dynamic between the two. He resented her strength and her power. She beat COVID, and he couldn't even strangle her to death. Even at 76, recovering from COVID and asleep, she was still stronger than him. He had to use a vase to permanently incapacitate her. Donovan had an evil and wicked alter ego that Phyllis encountered when it was already too late. While his family referred to him as Junior, Donovan referred to himself as an alien. Junior told the police he had thoughts of self-harm, but the alien ended up harming and ending his grandmother instead. The alien finished Phyllis in her bed. Junior helped his sister with a bed delivery. Junior described the house as messy, and the alien had messy thoughts, as can testify the rambling on the notepad. Junior claimed he didn't have mental illness, but the alien pleaded guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of mental illness. The alien, the alter ego that Donovan created, is a very dangerous person because he commits crimes that violate societal taboo, like matricide. Phyllis was almost like a mother at this point for Donovan. The alien also committed incest and necrophilia. And the fact that he sexually assaulted a victim who couldn't defend herself and was incapacitated forever makes Donovan/the alien a massive threat to children if he is released. I hope Donovan is never released, because first, the crime was awful, but also, if he was diagnosed with an abnormality of the brain, it means that it is irreversible. So if it cannot be fixed, it could definitely happen again, and his next victim may likely be a child.